Alright, ladies and gentlemen, for today's video we're going to take a look at another of our organic macromolecules. This time we're going to look at the organic macromolecule nucleic acids. So nucleic acids, like every macromolecule, have a polymer and a monomer. Now the monomer unit for a nucleic acid is called a nucleotide. And a nucleotide by itself is actually a complex molecule that's made up of 3 different pieces. But when you want to know what a nucleic acid is made of, the answer is nucleotides. So nucleotides are the monomer unit for nucleic acids. It's useful to think of it as if I want to take a nucleic acid and decide what pieces I'm going to use to build it, then it's going to be nucleotides, are the pieces that make up a nucleic acid. So right here, we have a nucleotide. And every nucleotide has 3 parts. They have a sugar, and the sugar is a carbohydrate, just like we saw in our last video where carbohydrates are one of the macromolecules. Nucleotides are a little more complex. They actually have a sugar as part of their structure. And you can see right here, this is the sugar. And you can see all the things that we talked about. There's only C's and O's and H's in it. The name of this particular sugar is ribose, all right? And it is a 5-carbon sugar, meaning it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 carbon atoms. Now, a nucleotide also has what's called a phosphate group, and that's what's right here. And you can see here is one of those places that phosphorus is a very important atom for living things. And you'll also see that there's plenty of oxygen. Phosphate groups are charged. They're important. They're going to show up a lot. They're just one of those things you want to be aware of what they are. And then the last part, and this is the most important part in terms of understanding how nucleic acids get variety. But there is this structure here called a nitrogenous base, or you see here I wrote a nitrogen base. And the reason we call it a nitrogen base or a nitrogenous base is because it has nitrogen, 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 nitrogen. So this is one of those places where the nitrogen aspect of those 6 most important elements to living things comes into play. And you can see that each of these pieces has a bit of a complex structure to it. The phosphate group has that sort of circle form, and it's charged. You can see that with these negative charges right here. The sugar has all the properties of the carbohydrates that we talked before, 5 carbon. And then the nitrogenous base has a very complex structure in that case. But the thing about the nitrogenous base is there's actually 4 varieties. And this is where different nucleotides come from. See, there's 4 types of nitrogenous bases. There is what's known as adenine, which we abbreviate A, thymine, which we abbreviate T, guanine, which we abbreviate G, and cytosine, which we abbreviate C. So the 4 types of nitrogenous bases give us 4 different types of nucleotides. The adenine nucleotide has a sugar and a phosphate group, but it has the adenine nitrogenous base. The thymine nucleotide has a phosphate group, a sugar, and a nitrogen base, but it has the thymine nitrogen base. All right? So there's 4 types of nucleotides, and the reason that they're different is because each one has one of those nitrogen bases. And this actually is going to be a big deal when we get to our genetics unit, but here you just need to understand the basics, okay? Now, that's the monomer units. So the monomer units of nucleic acids are nucleotides. So that leads us to what's the polymer? Well, the polymer unit of a nucleic acid comes in 2 forms. There is either RNA, which is ribose nucleic acid, or DNA, which is deoxyribose nucleic acid. The difference between these 2 things is DNA has less oxygen, hence the deoxy, all right? Here you have a diagram And I'm actually sure you're familiar with the one on the left, because this right here is the double helix that you talk about, I'm sure, at several stages in all that you've learned about life science. But what I'd like to point out is that this is a nucleotide. This is a nucleotide. This is a nucleotide. That is a nucleotide. So the nucleotides are connected in a chain. In DNA, they actually also have two chains that face each other. Over here, this is RNA. And RNA also has these nucleotides. This is a nucleotide. This is a nucleotide. This is a nucleotide. But the thing about RNA is it's only one chain. DNA is two chains. But they're both built of nucleotides combined in a row. So, like we said, DNA and RNA are composed of nucleotides connected in a chain. The difference is that RNA is only one of those chains, whereas DNA is two. Now, a little bit about the uses. So there's the structure, because remember, structure equals function. So DNA and RNA composed of nucleotides in a chain, DNA being two chains, RNA being one chain. Those are the structure. The function is that DNA is used to store blueprints for any living thing. Some living things can use RNA, but nucleic acids can store the blueprints for any living thing. Nucleic acids also have the operating instructions for any living thing. So they actually include in the nucleic acid how to build a living thing and how to make a living thing work. That's actually what happens with nucleic acids. That's what they do. Now, it's very important to understand that in some organisms, RNA does this. In some organisms, DNA does this. But in most organisms, DNA and RNA work together. And RNA is what helps carry out the instructions that you find in DNA. And again, this is a topic we're going to cover in great detail as we move on from section to section. So basically, when you're thinking about what is the use of nucleic acids, what are nucleic acids for, what you want to think about is nucleic acids store the information of life. All right, that's nucleic acids.